When I came back from a business trip, I found that my wife had changed the locks. "I found someone better," she texted, while sitting on my own couch. I took a deep breath, smiled, and replied, "Are you sure about that?" Then I turned around and walked away. 4 days later, she was screaming on the phone. The air was crisp, the kind of chill that seeps into your bones as I stepped off the plane in Seattle. My name is Jake. I'm 34, and I've been a software engineer at a tech company for what feels like forever. Life with Emily, my wife of 7 years, has been a tapestry of routine and comfort. She's the social butterfly, always fluttering around with gatherings and friends, while I've been content in the cocoon of our cozy suburban home, working on the next big tech breakthrough. This trip to Silicon Valley was supposed to be a breath of fresh air, a chance to dive into the future of technology, to network, and maybe, just maybe, bring back something innovative to the office. Emily had her own plans, though. She was going to revamp our living space, turn it into something out of those design magazines she loves so much. She even mentioned having some friends over to help out. As I walked through the terminal, my phone buzzed with a message from Emily. "Can't wait for you to see the changes at home." A smile crept across my face, imagining the surprise she had in store. Maybe she'd finally painted the living room that deep blue she'd been talking about, or perhaps she'd rearranged the furniture in a way that would make our home feel new again. Ride home was uneventful, the city lights blurring into a comforting glow as I neared our neighborhood. But as I approached our front door, something felt off. The key, which had always slid into the lock with ease, now met resistance. I tried again, thinking perhaps I was just tired from the trip. But no, the key didn't fit. Add a conclusion to the sentence, such as I realized something was terribly wrong. I knocked, expecting Emily to open the door with a laugh, explaining some silly mix-up. But there was no answer. I knocked again, louder this time, my mind racing through possibilities. Maybe she was out back, or maybe she was just in the shower. But why would she change the locks? I stepped back, my eyes scanning the house. The lights were on, casting a warm glow through the windows, but there was an eerie silence. No music, no laughter from her friends, just the hum of the streetlights and the distant sound of a neighbor's dog barking. My phone buzzed again, this time with a message that sent a chill down my spine. "I'm sorry, Jake. We need to talk." What could this mean? My mind was a whirlwind of confusion and fear. Emily, the woman who had shared my life, my dreams, my bed, had changed the locks. Why? What had happened in the mere 3 days I was away? The anticipation of a surprise turned into a sinking dread as I stood there, key in hand, locked out of my own life. Confusion turned to concern as I stood there, key in hand, staring at the lock that no longer accepted it. I knocked on the door, half expecting Emily to swing it open with that infectious laugh of hers, explaining it was all just a prank. But the silence was deafening. My phone vibrated, pulling me from my thoughts. I pulled it out, and there it was, a photo of Emily sitting on our couch, a man's arm draped around her. The text beneath it read, "I found someone better." A mix of shock and betrayal surged through me. My fingers trembled as I typed back, "Are you sure about that?" With a smile that didn't reach my eyes, I turned away from the house. Change was supposed had been, to maintain tense consistency. I walked down the street, each step heavy with the weight of my crumbling world. My mind raced, replaying moments, searching for signs I might have missed. Emily's increasing distance, those secretive phone calls, her sudden interest in renovating our home. Had I been so absorbed in my work, in the next big tech breakthrough, that I failed to see the drift? I checked into a hotel, the impersonal room a stark contrast to the warmth of our home. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I let the silence envelop, me trying to piece together the fragments of our life. Emily's laughter, her touch, the way she'd light up when talking about her latest project. But then, there were the late nights, the excuses, the way she dodged my questions about her day. I remembered the last time we made love, how it felt like she was somewhere else, her mind not with me. The intimacy we once shared now felt like a distant memory overshadowed by the image of her with another man. As I sat there, the phone rang, slicing through the quiet. It was Emily. My heart skipped a beat. What could she possibly want now? After everything, after the photo, the message, the locked door. I hesitated, the phone vibrating in my hand, each ring a reminder of what we had lost. I answered, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. Emily, what do you want? I hesitated before answering the call. Emily's voice was frantic, almost unrecognizable. Jake, you need to come back, something's wrong. Her tone was urgent, filled with fear. Despite the betrayal, a surge of concern washed over me. I agreed to meet her at a nearby cafe, not wanting to return to the house that now felt like a stranger's. Change the occasional whisper to an occasional whisper, for grammatical correctness. Emily was already there, sitting at a corner table, her usual poise replaced by distress. Her hair was a mess, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She looked up as I approached, her face a mask of fear and relief. Jake, she started, her voice trembling. I didn't know who else to call. Mark, the man I left you for, he's not who I thought he was. She paused, taking a shaky breath. At first, he seemed perfect, charming, attentive, everything I thought I wanted. But after you left, his true colors began to show. I listened, my emotions a tangled mess of sympathy and vindication. Emily continued. He's controlling Jake. He has a temper, and I've seen him involved in some shady business dealings. I tried to leave, but he won't let me go easily. Her words hit me like a cold wave. The image of her with another man, the one who had replaced me, was now overshadowed by the fear in her eyes. He's threatened me, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I'm scared for my safety. I felt a responsibility to help despite everything. The woman who had so quickly discarded me was now in distress, and the part of me that still loved her couldn't ignore her plea. But at what cost? Would I risk my safety for her, after she had so callously moved on? The cafe around us seemed to fade into the background as I processed her words. The betrayal still stung, but seeing Emily like this, so vulnerable, stirred something deep within me. I remembered the good times, the laughter, the shared dreams. But those memories were now tainted by the reality of her actions and the danger she was in. I don't know what to do, Jake, she said, her eyes searching mine for some sign of the man she once knew. I'm sorry for everything. I was wrong, so wrong. The weight of her words, the sincerity in her voice, it all tugged at my heartstrings. But the question remained, hanging between us like a thick fog. Could I forgive her? Could I put myself at risk for someone who had hurt me so deeply? The cafe door opened, letting in a gust of cold air, snapping me back to the present. Emily's gaze was fixed on me, waiting for my response, her life potentially hanging in the balance. What would I do? The decision loomed large, a crossroads of past love and present danger. Would I step back into the fray, or would I let the past remain in the past? I looked at Emily, her eyes wide with fear, and despite the storm of emotions within me, I knew I couldn't just walk away, not when she was in danger. Okay, I said, my voice firm. We'll figure this out together. But we need a plan. We spent the next hour in the cafe, whispering over the clink of porcelain, crafting a strategy to confront Mark. The idea was simple. I would act as a mediator, a neutral party to diffuse the tension. Emily would be there, but she'd keep her distance, letting me handle the initial conversation. The park near our home, with its open spaces and public visibility, seemed like the safest bet. We agreed to meet there at dusk, when the park would still be populated enough to deter any extreme actions, but quiet enough for a private conversation. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the grass, we arrived at the park. Emily stayed back, near the playground, while I stood by the central gazebo waiting for Mark. The air was thick with the scent of pine and the distant murmur of evening joggers. Mark appeared, his silhouette cutting through the dim light. His steps were heavy, his posture aggressive. He spotted me first, his eyes narrowing. "Jake," he spat out my name like it was poison. "What's this about?" I held up my hands in a gesture of peace. "Mark, we need to talk. Emily's scared, and I think there's been a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" His voice rose, a mix of anger and disbelief. "She's been playing you, Jake. She's good at that, isn't she?" I tried to keep my voice calm, my heart pounding in my chest. "Look, let's just sit down and—" Before I could finish, Mark was in my face, his breath hot with rage. "You think you can just waltz back into her life after she left you?" "It's not about that, Mark. It's about making sure Emily's safe. If you care about her at all, you'll listen." His eyes flickered with something unreadable, then hardened again. "Safe? From what? From me? She's the one who's been messing with my head, telling me one thing and then—" "Mark, please," I interjected, trying to steer the conversation back to reason. "Let's just talk this out." But Mark wasn't listening. His hand went to his pocket, and in a flash, the dim light caught the glint of metal. A knife. My breath hitched. As he brandished it, his voice now a low growl. "You think you can take her from me? After everything?" The park, once a place of tranquility, now felt like a stage set for a confrontation I hadn't anticipated. Emily, seeing the knife, let out a stifled cry, her hand over her mouth. I stepped slightly in front of her, my mind racing. "Mark, put the knife down." "This isn't going to solve anything," I said, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. He laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "You think I'm going to let her go? After she's seen too much? After she's made me look like a fool?" I could see the desperation in his eyes, the fear of losing control. "Mark, no one's trying to make you look like anything. We just want to talk, to find a way out of this where no one gets hurt." The knife trembled in his hand, his gaze darting between Emily and me. The tension was palpable, the air charged with the potential for violence. I knew I had to act to protect Emily, to de-escalate the situation before it spiraled out of control. Add a resolution, such as, I knew I had to act quickly to disarm him. The moment stretched, time slowing as I calculated. My next move, the weight of the decision heavy on my shoulders. As Mark's hand tightened around the knife, I remembered the self-defense class I took years ago. It was a move I had practiced countless times, but never thought I'd use in real life. With a swift motion, I grabbed Mark's wrist, twisting it with enough force to make him drop the knife. It clattered to the ground, the sound echoing through the park like a gunshot. Mark, now weaponless, didn't back down. His face contorted with rage, he lunged at me. We hit the ground hard, the impact knocking the wind out of me. But adrenaline surged through my veins, fueling my movements. I managed to roll us over, pinning him down with my body weight. His arms flailed, trying to break free, but I held firm, my knees pressing into his shoulders. "Emily, call the police," I shouted over my shoulder, my voice firm but laced with urgency. Emily, trembling, pulled out her phone. Her fingers shook as she dialed, her voice quivering as she explained the situation to the dispatcher. "Yes, we're at the park near our house. My ex is here, and he's attacking my husband. Please, hurry." The seconds stretched into what felt like hours, Mark struggling beneath me, his curses filling the air. I could feel his strength waning, but the danger was still palpable. My heart pounded in my chest, not just from the physical exertion, but from the fear of what could happen if he got free. Finally, the distant wail of sirens cut through the tension. Mark's resistance weakened as he realized the police were on their way. His eyes, once filled with fury, now showed a flicker of fear. The police arrived, their car lights casting an eerie glow over the scene. Officers approached, guns drawn, assessing the situation. I slowly released Mark, stepping back with my hands up, showing I was no threat. They quickly moved in, cuffing Mark and pulling him to his feet. He didn't resist, his head bowed, the fight drained out of him. Emily rushed to my side, her eyes wide with relief and something else, something like regret. "Jake, I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I didn't think it would come to this." I looked at her, the woman I had loved, the one who had turned our life upside down. There was a part of me that wanted to lash out, to tell her how much she had hurt me. But as I watched the police lead Mark away, a different emotion took over, a sense of closure. "It's over now, Emily," I said, my voice softer than I expected. "But we can't go back to what we had. Too much has changed." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know. I'm glad you're safe." The officers took statements, their questions mechanical, their presence a stark reminder of the reality we were now living. As they finished, one of them approached me. "You did well, sir. That was a dangerous situation." I nodded, not feeling particularly heroic. "Just did what I had to do." With Mark in custody, the immediate threat was gone, but the air was thick with unresolved emotions. Emily and I stood there, the space between us filled with the echoes of our past life together. As the police car drove away, taking Mark with it, I turned to Emily. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice small. I looked at her, really looked at her, seeing not just the woman who had betrayed me, but also the one who had been in danger. "I don't know, Emily, but we'll figure it out." One step at a time, we walked away from the park, the night enveloping us, each step forward a step into an uncertain future. The bond we once had was broken, but there was a new path to tread, one where we might find a way to coexist, if not as lovers, then perhaps as allies in the aftermath of chaos. The question of what the future held for us lingered, a silent companion as we left the park behind. As the adrenaline began to fade, Emily and I found ourselves back in the cafe where it all started. The familiar clink of cups and the murmur of quiet conversations seemed almost surreal after the chaos at the park. Emily's eyes were still red, her face pale, but there was a hint of relief in her expression now that Mark was no longer a threat. "I'm so sorry, Jake," she said again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never meant for any of this to happen." I took a deep breath, the weight of the evening's events pressing down on me. "I know, Emily, but we can't undo what's been done. We need to move forward." She nodded, her hands wrapped tightly around her coffee mug as if it could offer some warmth to her chilled soul. "I understand. I hope you can forgive me someday." I looked at her, really looked at her, seeing the woman I had loved, the life we had built together, now shattered. "I will always care for you, Emily, but our relationship, it can't go back to what it was. I'm moving forward, alone." Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded, understanding the finality in my voice. "I'll support your decision, Jake. You deserve a fresh start." The next few weeks were a blur of activity. I accepted a job offer in another city, a chance to leave behind the memories that now haunted our once shared home. Emily helped me pack, her presence a bittersweet reminder of what we had lost. We spoke little, but when we did, it was with a mutual respect for the life we once shared. The day I left, Emily stood at the door of our old house, the one she had changed the locks on, now open to let me go. "Take care, Jake," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. "You too, Emily," I replied, my voice thick with the weight of goodbye. I drove away, the city lights fading in my rearview mirror, each mile taking me further from the past and closer to a new beginning. Months later, I was settled in my new city, my new job proving to be both challenging and rewarding. I had found a small apartment with a view of the skyline, a stark contrast to the suburban tranquility I had known. The city was alive, pulsing with energy, and I found myself thriving in its rhythm. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Emily. My heart skipped a beat, not from longing, but from the closure I had been seeking. The message read, "I hope you're happy, Jake. I'm sorry for everything." I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back, I am happy. Take care, Emily. I set my phone down, looking out at the city lights, feeling a sense of peace. Wash over me. The city stretched out before me, a canvas of endless possibilities. I was alone, but not lonely. There was a freedom in this solitude, a chance to redefine myself without the shadows of past mistakes. As I stood there, the future seemed both daunting and exhilarating. What adventures awaited me in this new chapter of my life? The question lingered, not with fear, but with anticipation. My journey had just begun, and I was ready for whatever came next. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.